I left on a Tuesday, which feels like the most honest day to leave. Not dramatic. Not ceremonial. Just practical. Like taking out the trash or changing a light bulb. The kind of day where nobody expects your whole life to change. I didn't announce it. I didn't threaten. I didn't give a speech about boundaries or healing or protecting my peace. I packed a suitcase, loaded my car, and drove away from the house I kept returning to like a bad habit. And the last thing my mother said to me as I stepped through the front door wasn't "be safe" or "call me when you get there." It was, "You're so ungrateful." My father didn't stop her. He just stood behind her in the hallway, arms crossed, like a security guard at the door of a place I'd paid to enter my whole life. "After everything we've done," he added, shaking his head, "you'll regret this." I didn't argue. Not because I didn't have words. 'Cause I'd used them all already. I'd spent years trying to explain how it felt to be the strong one who never needed anything, the difficult one who ruined family dinners by existing, the daughter who got criticized for not visiting enough and then punished when she did. Words didn't reach them. Only silence did. I drove to my apartment 2 states away, the one I'd been slowly turning into a real home. I'd moved for work 6 months earlier, and my parents had treated it like a betrayal. "You're abandoning your family," Mom had said when I got the job offer. All for money. Like money was something shameful when I earned it. Like they hadn't spent my entire childhood using money as a leash. I remember the first time I realized that. I was 16, standing in the kitchen with my backpack on, asking for $20 for a school trip. My mom's mouth tightened. "Do you think money grows on trees?" She snapped. Dad looked up from the newspaper and said, "If you want money, you work." My brother got his trip paid without asking. My sister got a new phone because hers was embarrassing. I got a lecture. I learned early that in our family, love came with receipts. And the receipts were never in my favor, so when I moved for work, I stopped asking. I paid for my own life. My own bills. My own health insurance. My own groceries. My own peace. I called them every Sunday anyway. Like a ritual. Like proof that I wasn't the monster they kept describing. Sunday at 7 p.m. I'd call. I'd listen to my mother complain about someone, usually me indirectly, and I'd laugh in the right places to keep the conversation moving. I'd ask about Dad's back, about the neighbor's dog, about my aunt's drama. I'd do the emotional labor of a daughter who was never allowed to be an actual daughter. Then came the Tuesday I left. I'd driven home for a weekend because Mom insisted. "We never see you," she said. "You act like you don't have parents." I almost laughed at that. 'Cause I did have parents. I just didn't have the kind who acted like it. I arrived Friday night, exhausted from work, and within 10 minutes Mom was already criticizing the way I looked. "You've gotten too skinny," she said, pinching my arm like she was checking meat at a grocery store. "Are you eating? Or are you doing one of your little health kicks?" Dad barely looked up from the TV. "Hey," he said, like I was a neighbor stopping by. I tried anyway. I helped in the kitchen. I cleaned up after dinner. I sat through my mom's stories about how hard it was to be a mother to ungrateful children, while she glanced at me like the ungrateful one was the reason she had wrinkles. By Sunday afternoon, my chest felt tight the way it always did in that house. Like the walls were reminding me who I used to be. Then it happened. We were in the living room and Mom started complaining about my last visit. "You were so cold," she said. "You barely talked. You acted like you didn't want to be here." My father chimed in. "You come in with an attitude and then you leave early. It's rude." I stared at them. "I left early because you screamed at me," I said quietly. My mother laughed. "Screamed?" "Honey," I raised my voice. "Don't be dramatic." There it was again. Dramatic. The word they used to erase my reality. I felt something in my chest go still. Not numb. Still. Like a door closing. I stood up. "I'm leaving today," I said calmly. Mom's face snapped. "Leaving? Your flight is tomorrow. I'm driving, I said. Now. Dad's eyebrows lifted. Because of this? He scoffed, waving his hand like my feelings were dust. Because of everything, I said. And I walked toward the hallway to get my bag. Mom followed fast, voice rising. You cannot keep punishing us because you can't handle normal family conversations. Dad stood too, blocking the doorway like he always did when he wanted control. Sit down, he ordered. We're not done talking. I looked at him. I am, I said. His jaw tightened. You're so ungrateful, he said. You think you're better than us now because you moved away and got a little job. A little job. I made more than both of them combined now, but I'd never thrown it in their faces. I'd only used it to finally breathe. Mom's voice sharpened. Do you know how much we sacrificed for you? She demanded. We kept a roof over your head. We fed you. Fed me. Like basic parenting was a debt I owed forever. I nodded slowly. You did the legal minimum, I said quietly. And you've been charging me interest ever since. My mother's eyes widened like I'd slapped her. How dare you, she whispered. Dad pointed at the door. Fine, he snapped. Go. If you walk out, don't expect us to keep chasing you. I grabbed my suitcase. I'm not leaving to be chased, I said. I'm leaving because I'm done begging. Mom followed me to the front door, trembling with rage. You are so ungrateful, she repeated. Ungrateful, 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 like if she said it enough times it would become my identity. I turned once, hand on the doorknob, and said the truth I'd never been allowed to say. You don't want gratitude, I said softly. You want control. Dad scoffed. Here we go with the therapy talk. I opened the door. Cold air hit my face. Call me when you grow up, my mother snapped. The door shut behind me with a quiet click. And in that click, something ended. I drove for 6 hours straight. No music. Just the sound of tires and the quiet buzzing in my brain as my body tried to understand that I had actually done it. I'd left. Without permission. Without apology. I got home late, dragged my suitcase inside, and sat on my couch in the dark. My phone was silent. No messages. No calls. Just empty. And instead of panicking, I felt relief. Not the joyful kind. The exhausted kind. Like finally dropping a heavy bag you didn't realize you'd been carrying. That night, I slept 8 hours straight for the first time in months. The next morning, the messages started. Mom, I hope you're happy. Dad, you really hurt your mother. Mom, you owe us an apology. I didn't answer. Not out of spite. Out of consistency. Because any response would become a debate, and debates were how they kept me trapped. A week passed. Then 2. Then 3. The silence changed. First, it was quiet rage from them. Then it became something else, confusion. 'Cause they were used to me coming back. Used to me smoothing it over. Used to me calling, even when I was the one who'd been hurt. They weren't prepared for a daughter who actually stayed gone. On week 4, my phone rang at 7 p.m. on a Sunday. The old ritual time. I stared at the screen until it stopped. Then it rang again. I let it stop. Then a text came through from my mother. Mom, why aren't you calling? My hands went cold. Not because I was scared. 'Cause the audacity was so clean. They called me ungrateful for leaving. They told me not to expect them to chase me. They told me to call when I grew up. And now they were confused by the silence they had demanded. My father texted next. Dad, we haven't heard from you. Are you okay? I stared at that line. Are you okay? The first time my father had asked me that in years. Not when I was stressed. Not when I was sick. Not when I cried as a teenager. Only now when my silence made them uncomfortable. Only now when the phone didn't ring and they had nothing to complain about except the absence of their favorite Target. I set my phone down and made tea. I sat at my kitchen table and watched the steam rise like a quiet clock. I thought about all the Sundays I'd called, trying to earn a version of love that didn't exist. I thought about being 16 and asking for $20 and being told I was entitled. I thought about my mother pinching my arm and asking if I was doing a health kick like my body was a problem she had to monitor. I thought about my father blocking doorways, about my mother's favorite word, ungrateful, and I realized something. They didn't miss me. Not really. They missed the role I played. The role where I absorbed their moods and made them feel like parents without them having to be kind. The role where my calls gave them a stage and my silence forced them to face themselves. My phone buzzed again. Mom, this is cruel. Dad, we're your parents. We deserve respect. I stared at the word deserve. They always used it like a weapon. Like respect was something they were entitled to, not something they had to earn. I opened the Notes app and typed one sentence. Then I copied it into a message. Not long. Not emotional. Just a boundary so clear it couldn't be misheard. I sent it. Then I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and went for a walk in the evening air, letting my body learn what peace felt like without being interrupted by guilt, and that's when I understood what the real revenge was in my story. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't exposing them online. It wasn't proving I was right. It was letting the phone stay silent and watching who couldn't survive without my voice filling the space. I didn't send the message right away. I stared at the draft in my notes like it was a match over gasoline. 'Cause once you finally name the rule, you can't pretend you don't know it anymore. And my entire childhood was built on pretending. Pretending I didn't notice the favoritism, pretending the jokes didn't sting, pretending the ungrateful label didn't train me to earn love like a paycheck. But that Sunday, with my phone lighting up like a guilt alarm, I realized something simple. If they truly cared whether I was okay, they would have asked while I was still in the house. They would have asked when I was packing. They would have asked when I looked exhausted. They would have asked when Mom pinched my arm and I forced a laugh. They didn't. They waited until my silence made them uncomfortable. That's the part people don't understand about no contact. They think it's punishment. It's not. It's what happens when you stop volunteering for a role that hurts you. I opened Mom's last text again. This is cruel, and I almost laughed. Cruel was being told I was too sensitive every time I cried as a kid. Cruel was being called dramatic when my feelings didn't fit their story. Cruel was being taught that the only way to keep peace was to swallow disrespect like it was dinner. Cruel was them calling me ungrateful at the door and then acting shocked when I stopped showing up with gratitude on demand. I set my mug down, took a breath, and finally hit send on the one sentence I typed earlier. Me, I'm okay. I'm just no longer calling people who only want me when I'm convenient. The typing bubble appeared instantly. Mom, how dare you? Dad, Madison, don't do this. Mom, we are your parents. Dad, you're being childish. There it was. The pivot. They couldn't argue the truth, so they attacked the tone. If they could label me childish, they could dismiss the boundary as a tantrum. My mother followed with a voice note. I didn't open it immediately. I waited until my chest felt calm. Then I hit play. Her voice was trembling with the kind of rage that pretends to be heartbreak. I don't know who you think you are, she said, but you do not get to speak to us like we're strangers. We gave you everything. And this is the thanks we get? Silence? Disrespect? You're hurting your father. He hasn't slept. I almost admired the craftsmanship. She managed to blame me, cast herself as the victim, and turn my father into a hostage in one breath. It was her signature move. If she couldn't control me directly, she'd control the guilt around me. I didn't reply. I didn't explain. I didn't defend. I did something much quieter. I called my best friend Tessa and told her the truth out loud. They called me ungrateful, I said. And now they're asking why the phone is silent like they didn't build the silence themselves. Tessa didn't say, maybe you should just apologize. She didn't say, they're still your parents. She said, do you want peace or do you want the illusion of peace? That question sat in my chest like a weight and a gift. Because the illusion was what I'd been buying every Sunday at 7 p.m. I'd been paying with my time, my energy, my self-respect, and my nervous system, and the product never worked. It always broke the next time Mom needed a target. After we hung up, I opened my calendar and realized something that made me feel sick. The Sunday calls weren't just a habit. They were an appointment. A mandatory check-in to prove I was still obedient. I deleted the recurring reminder that I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. My parents don't handle no the way healthy people do. Healthy people get sad, maybe disappointed, and then they adjust. My parents escalate. They started recruiting. First, my aunt. Aunt Denise, your mother is beside herself. You have no idea what you're doing to this family. Then my cousin. Cousin, hey, heard you and your mom are fighting. Just call her. Life's short. Then even my brother, who hadn't texted me in weeks, suddenly showed up with concern. Brother, Mom says you're ignoring them. What's your problem? I stared at his text until my eyes blurred. He didn't ask what happened. He asked what my problem was. Because in our family, Mom's feelings were treated like facts, and my feelings were treated like inconveniences. I replied to him with the truth I'd never said to his face. My problem is they only want me when I'm useful to them. He responded 3 minutes later. Brother, you're overreacting. Just say sorry. Overreacting. Another family favorite. The word they use to make you doubt your own reality. I set my phone down and felt that old reflex, panic, shame, the urge to fix it. Then I watched it pass like a wave. That was new. I'd never let the wave pass before. I'd always acted on it. Apologized. Explained. Returned to the scene like a firefighter trying to put out a fire. My mother kept starting them. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Dad calling. I hesitated, then answered because part of my boundary wasn't about punishment, it was about clarity. If he could talk like an adult, I could listen. If he couldn't, I'd end the call. Simple Madison, he said, voice tight. Your mother is really upset. I know, I said calmly. Why are you doing this? He asked. Why are you making it so extreme? There it was. Extreme. Like silence was violence. Like me not calling was cruelty. Like their words at the door had been nothing. Dad, I said softly. You called me ungrateful for leaving. You told me you wouldn't chase me. So I stopped calling. He exhaled sharply. That's not what we meant, he said. Then what did you mean? I asked, still calm. There was a pause long enough that I could hear him swallow. We meant you can't just walk out and punish us, he said. So you did mean punishment, I replied gently. You just wanted me to do it to myself. His voice sharpened. Don't twist my words. I felt my spine straighten. I'm not twisting, I said. I'm repeating. My father went quiet for a beat. Then he tried a softer tone. Your mother misses you, he said. Does she? I asked. Or does she miss the Sunday phone call? His breath hitched. That's not fair, he muttered. It's accurate, I said. Fair would have been you asking if I was okay before I left. Fair would have been you stopping Mom from calling me ungrateful. Fair would have been you saying, drive safe. Silence. Then, like clockwork, he reached for authority. You're being disrespectful, he said. No, I replied. I'm being unavailable. That line landed like a door shutting. He got angry. So what now? He snapped. You're just going to disappear? I took a breath. No, I said. I'm going to stop performing. He scoffed. Performing? Yes, I said. Performing being the daughter who calls no matter how you treat her. Performing forgiveness. Performing gratitude for the legal minimum. My father's voice went quiet, almost dangerous. You think you're so mature, he said. But this is childish. I didn't rise to it. Dad, I said, if you want a relationship with me, it can't be based on obligation. It has to be based on respect. And right now, you're calling me names because I stopped calling. He started to speak. I cut in calmly. I'm going to end this call if you insult me again. There was a long pause. Then he said something I didn't expect. Not an apology. Not accountability. But a crack. Your mother is scared, he admitted quietly. Of what? I asked. Of losing you, he said, almost like it hurt to say that. I felt my throat tighten, not with guilt but with clarity. Dad, I said softly, if she's scared of losing me, she can stop calling me ungrateful. She can stop recruiting people to pressure me. She can ask how I am without demanding access. He didn't answer, because he knew she wouldn't. Call ended with a stiff goodbye, but I noticed something. He didn't hang up on me. He didn't yell. He didn't slam the conversation shut. He just retreated. That was progress in our language. Not love, but less control. That night, my mother sent a final text that proved she still didn't understand anything. Mom, if you don't call this week, don't bother coming for Thanksgiving. I stared at it and felt the old fear try to rise, the fear of being cut off, excluded, erased. Then I remembered the truth. They'd been excluding me emotionally for years. This was just paperwork that I typed back one sentence. Me understood. I won't be coming. Then I turned my phone to Do Not Disturb and sat at my kitchen table listening to the quiet. The silence wasn't cruel. The silence was clean. And for the first time, I realized why they couldn't stand it. Without my voice filling the space, they had to hear their own. I didn't scream. I didn't lunge. I didn't beg. I just stepped forward calmly, so calmly it made my dad hesitate for half a second. Then I reached out and took my container out of his hand. Not yanking. Not dramatic. Just a clean, deliberate reclaiming. Like I was taking back something that never should have left my control. No, I said, voice steady. You're not doing that. My dad's face flushed red. Give it back, he snapped, like my food belonged to him because it was on his property. I set the container on the table next to my plate and kept my hands visible. This is my dinner, I said evenly. And you don't get to throw it away because you're embarrassed. Mom's eyes narrowed into slits. Anna, she said slowly, you're being disrespectful in front of your aunt. I looked at her. You're trying to starve me in front of your aunt, I replied. Silence. Laura's mouth twitched, not amused now, uncertain. Because calling it out that plainly made it sound as ugly as it was. Dad pointed at my container. You're making a scene, he barked. I tilted my head. The only scene happening, I said, is you hovering my food over a trash can like a tantrum. My aunt scoffed loudly. Oh, stop, she snapped. Nobody is starving you. Just eat what's served. I kept my voice calm. I won't, I said. And that's not negotiable. Dad laughed, sharp and angry. Who do you think you are? He demanded. You come into my house and set rules? I didn't flinch. I'm not setting rules for your house, I said. I'm setting rules for my body. Mom's lips curled. Your body, she repeated, mocking. So dramatic. Laura leaned forward, voice dripping with fake curiosity. Are you going to start crying next? That hit something deep. Not because it was clever, but because it was familiar, how they trained me to associate emotion with humiliation. I felt my throat tighten. Then I breathed through it. No, I said quietly. I'm going to eat. I took a fork from the drawer calmly, scooped a bite of chickpeas, and put it in my mouth. The act was so simple, so peaceful, it felt like a rebellion. My mom stared like I'd spat in her face. Unbelievable, she whispered. My dad slammed his hand on the table. This is not how we do dinner, he snapped. I swallowed, then looked at him steadily. Then you don't know how to do dinner with me, I said. His eyes widened, rage flickering. Oh, so now we have to learn your lifestyle, he mocked. I nodded once. If you want me here, yes, I said. Because this isn't a lifestyle. It's my health. Mom waved her hand dismissively. You're exaggerating. Your stomach will survive one meal. Maybe, I said, but our relationship won't survive you ignoring my boundaries on purpose. That made Dad's jaw clench. On purpose, he repeated. You think we did this on purpose? I didn't raise my voice. You've known for 2 years, I said. You made a roast big enough to feed the neighborhood. You set 4 plates with meat. You didn't make a single side dish I can eat. And the moment I tried to eat my own food, Dad tried to throw it away. I let that sink in. That's not forgetting, I said quietly. That's a message. My aunt's face hardened. What message? She snapped. I looked at her. That I'm only welcome if I comply, I said. Laura rolled her eyes. Oh my God, she muttered. You're so victim-why. I turned to her calm. Laura, I said, if you had a food restriction, if you couldn't eat dairy or gluten or peanuts, and I invited you to dinner and served nothing but cheese and bread, would you call yourself victim-why for not wanting to get sick? She didn't answer. She looked away. 'Cause she knew the answer. Dad scoffed, trying to rescue the control. That's different, he said. No, it isn't, I replied. You just respect some boundaries more than mine. Mom snapped, because yours are ridiculous. I felt the last thread inside me fray. Not rage, clarity. Okay, I said softly. If you think my health is ridiculous, then I won't be eating here anymore. Mom's eyes flashed. Fine, she said coldly. Then don't. There it was again. The threat they always used, exile, except this time she offered it like she was daring me to stay. Dad leaned back, smug now that he thought he'd won. Good, he muttered. Maybe you'll stop with this nonsense. I looked around the table, at my aunt's satisfied expression, at Laura's half-smile, at my mom's tight mouth, at my dad's pride in putting me in my place. And in that moment, the weirdest thing happened. I stopped wanting their approval. I stopped wanting to be understood. I just wanted to leave. I put my fork down gently. You're right, I said calmly. I won't eat here. Dad blinked, thrown off by my calmness. Good, he repeated, expecting me to crumble. I picked up my container, snapped the lid on, and stood. I'm leaving, I said. Mom's head snapped up. Leaving? Now? Yes, I replied. Because I came for dinner and you served me a lecture. Dad stood too. Don't be ridiculous, he barked. Sit down. I met his eyes. No, I said quietly. You had a chance to treat me like family. You chose to treat me like a problem. Mom's voice sharpened. If you walk out, don't expect us to chase you. I nodded. I'm not walking out to be chased, I said. I'm walking out to be safe. That made the room go quiet. Safe. A word that didn't belong in their narrative. Laura laughed nervously. Safe from what exactly? Prime rib. I looked at her. Safe from a family that would rather control me than feed me, I said. I headed for the door. Dad followed, voice rising. You are so ungrateful, he shouted. I didn't turn back. I just said one sentence over my shoulder, the sentence that hit hardest because it was true. Ungrateful is what you call someone when they stop accepting scraps. And I left. Cold air outside hit my face like clarity. My hands were shaking around the container, but my chest felt strangely light. In my car, I stared at the steering wheel and realized something. I wasn't hungry. Not really. I was angry. And beneath the anger was grief, for the version of family dinner I'd always wanted and never gotten. My phone buzzed before I even started the engine. Mom, don't come back until you can apologize. I stared at the text, then set my phone face down. Because for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to fix it. I felt the urge to protect myself. And then I drove home, where I could eat without being punished for it. The move I made next wasn't dramatic. It wasn't revenge. It was paperwork. And honestly, paperwork is the kind of boundary my family respects most, because it's the only thing they can't guilt trip into changing. I went to my bank first. I walked in with my ID and that steady, cold calm I get when I'm done being played. I asked the teller to put a note on my account. No changes over the phone, no family verification, no exceptions. Then I changed my security questions to answers nobody could guess. Not my childhood street. Not my first pet. Not my mother's maiden name. I used nonsense words. Things that had nothing to do with my life. 'Cause my family knows my life. That's the problem. Next, I called my phone carrier and set a poured-out PIN so my number couldn't be stolen or transferred. The representative asked, "Is someone trying to access your account?" And my throat tightened because the truth sounded insane out loud. "Yes," I said. "My mother." Then I did the thing that felt like swallowing a rock. I emailed my manager. Not an essay. Not a trauma dump. Just a professional heads up. "Hi, just letting you know someone attempted to impersonate me to HR. I've secured my accounts. If anyone contacts you claiming to be family, please forward it to me and do not engage." My manager replied in 3 minutes. "Understood. We've got you." Those 4 words hit me harder than any guilt text. Because they were what my parents should have said when I left. "We've got you." Instead, they tried to take control of me like I was property. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote my boundary letter. Not to send yet. To clarify it. I've learned that when you're dealing with manipulative people, you don't rely on memory. You document. You make it simple. You make it undeniable. I wrote, "Do not contact my workplace. Do not impersonate me. Do not post about me. Do not recruit relatives to pressure me. If you want a relationship, it begins with an apology and accountability." Then I stared at the letter and realized a terrifying truth. My mother would never read it as a request. She would read it as a challenge. And challenges were her favorite thing to win. So I didn't send it to her. Not yet. Instead, I sent a shorter version to my father only. One text. "Me, I need you to understand this is serious. Do not contact my workplace again. If you want to speak to me, it must be without Mom involved, and it must start with acknowledging what she did." He didn't respond for hours. When he finally did, it was 2 words, "Dad, she's panicking." I felt my chest tighten. Not with sympathy. With recognition. Panicking was my mother's favorite excuse for crossing boundaries. Like fear turned into a permission slip. Like anxiety made her actions loving instead of invasive. I replied, "Me, panic doesn't justify impersonation." Then I put my phone down and went for a run. I needed my body to remember it belonged to me. Halfway through the run, my watch buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Buzzed again. Then again. I finished my run, came home sweaty and steady, and checked voicemail. There were 3 messages. All from my mother's voice, but through different numbers. She sounded breathless. "Madison, pick up. This is ridiculous. You're acting crazy. If you don't answer, I'm calling the police for a wellness check." I stared at the last sentence until my vision sharpened. A wellness check. That was her newest weapon. Use authority to force access. If she couldn't make me call, she would make someone knock on my door. She didn't actually care if I was safe. She cared that she didn't have access to confirm I was still under her control. I sat down and forced myself to breathe. If I reacted emotionally, she'd win. She'd get the chaos she wanted. I needed to respond in a way that created consequences, not conversation, so I did 2 things. First, I called the non-emergency police line in my city and explained calmly that I was fine and that I had a family member who might misuse wellness checks as retaliation for boundaries. The dispatcher sounded understanding. She asked for my address and made a note. "If officers are sent," she said, "we'll document it." The relief was physical, like unclenching a fist I didn't realize I'd been holding. Second, I called my building manager and told him the same thing. If anyone shows up claiming to be family, I said, please don't let them in. If you're concerned, call me. But don't give them access. He paused, then said, we'll handle it. Again, we've got you. That night, my phone buzzed with a new message from my brother. Brother, Mom says you're unstable. She's worried you'll hurt yourself. Call her and stop this. I felt my stomach drop. That accusation wasn't just manipulative. It was dangerous. My mother was building a narrative that justified invasion. If she could convince people I was unstable, she could justify impersonation, wellness checks, harassment, anything. And my brother was feeding it. I opened my notes app again and typed a short timeline: dates, texts, HR incident, voicemail threats. I saved screenshots. I emailed them to myself. Paper trail. Because I understood something now. I wasn't just dealing with hurt feelings. I was dealing with a person willing to weaponize systems against me when she didn't get her way. Around midnight, my father finally called. I answered because part of me still wanted to believe he could be a bridge, not a messenger. His voice was low, exhausted. Madison, he said, your mother is crying. She says she doesn't recognize you. I almost laughed at the irony. Of course, she didn't recognize me. The version of me she recognized was obedient. Quiet. Available, Dad, I said calmly. I need you to listen. This is not about me being mad. This is about her crossing legal and safety lines. He sighed. She was trying to help, he insisted weakly. Help doesn't involve impersonating me to HR, I said, voice steady. Help doesn't involve threatening wellness checks to force me to answer. That is harassment. My father's breath hitched. You're making it sound so harsh, he murmured. It is harsh, I replied. I'm just saying it out loud. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that shocked me. I didn't know she called HR, he admitted. She told me she was just checking. I closed my eyes. Dad, I said softly, this is who she becomes when she loses control. And you need to decide if you're going to keep covering for it. His voice trembled. What do you want me to do? He asked. I opened my eyes and stared at the wall. I want you to stop being her shield, I said. And I want you to stop asking me to calm her down. He whispered, she'll lose it. I said the truth that had been waiting in my chest for years. Then she'll have to learn to survive without owning me. Silence. Then my father exhaled like he was collapsing inside himself. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. I'll tell her to stop. I didn't trust it fully. But it was the first time he'd spoken like he understood the stakes. The next day, my mother did something that confirmed she wasn't stopping. She mailed a letter. A physical letter. To my apartment. I hadn't given her my address. She'd gotten it from the HR chain. She found me anyway. I held the envelope in my hands, fingers trembling, realizing that my mother wasn't just confused by a silent phone. She was hunting me. And now the question wasn't whether I would call her. Question was how far she would go to force access, and how calm I could stay while shutting every door. I didn't open the letter right away. I set it on my kitchen table and stared at it like it was a live wire. My name in my mother's handwriting looked familiar and wrong at the same time, like seeing an old photo of yourself and realizing you don't live there anymore. She wasn't supposed to have my address. She wasn't supposed to be able to reach me physically. The silent phone was supposed to create distance. Instead, it made her chase. I ran my thumb along the edge of the envelope and felt my chest tighten, not with fear exactly, but with that sick recognition. She had used my workplace to locate me. She had crossed from emotional manipulation into real-world intrusion. And she was bold enough to leave proof in my hands. I finally opened it. Inside was a single page. Not a loving note. Not an apology. A manifesto. The first line was underlined. A mother has rights. I felt my jaw clench. She wrote about how she birthed me, how she sacrificed for me, how I owe her communication. She wrote that my silence was abuse, that my boundaries were cruel. She wrote that she'd been patient long enough. Then she ended with the line that made my stomach drop. If you continue this, I will do what I have to do to protect you. Protect. Again. Her favorite word for control. That I sat down slowly, letters shaking in my hands, and realized the threat wasn't hidden anymore. She was telling me in writing that she would escalate. That she believed she owned me. That she could justify anything as protection. That I took a photo of the letter, front and back. Then I scanned it into a PDF on my laptop and saved it in the same folder as the HR incident screenshots. Evidence. Because people like my mother only respect two things, authority and receipts. Then I called my therapist and read the line out loud. A mother has rights, I said, hearing how insane it sounded outside my head. My therapist paused and said, Madison, that is not love. That is entitlement. I swallowed hard. What do I do? I asked. She didn't tell me to talk it out. She didn't tell me to send a heartfelt letter. She said, you keep yourself safe. You document. You reduce access. And you stop negotiating with someone who thinks your silence is abuse. That sentence settled into my bones like a new law. I decided the next move had to be something my mother couldn't twist into drama. Not a fight. Not a rant. A formal boundary communicated once and then enforced. So I wrote an email. But not to her. To my father and my brother, because I knew they were her delivery system. Subject line: do not contact my workplace or home. Short. Clear. I wrote, Mom impersonated me to HR and changed my address. She threatened a wellness check to force contact. She has now mailed a letter stating a mother has rights and threatening escalation. This stops now. Do not contact my workplace. Do not come to my home. Do not call for wellness checks. If anyone attempts to access my records or my residence again, I will file a police report. No emotion. No insults. Just facts and consequences. I attached the scanned letter and the HR change confirmation. Receipts. Then I hit send and felt my hands stop shaking, because clarity has a calming effect when you've been living in confusion for years. My brother responded first, within minutes. Brother, you're overreacting. She's worried. Just call her and fix it. I stared at his message and felt something in me go cold. He still didn't care what she'd done. He cared that she was upset. He cared that the system was wobbling. I replied once. Worry doesn't justify impersonation or threats. Don't contact me again unless it's to confirm you won't participate in this. Then I muted him. My father took longer. When he finally replied, it was a paragraph of weak apologies and stronger excuses. Dad, your mother is beside herself. She didn't mean harm. She's just scared. Please, Madison, just call her once. Just once. It'll calm her down. I stared at just once and felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. Just once was how they kept me trapped for decades. Just once more phone call. Just one more visit. Just one more apology. Just one more time swallowing my own needs. I typed back. Dad, I'm not calling someone who used my HR file to find my address. That's not fear. That's control. If you want a relationship with me, it cannot involve Mom's access to me. I'm serious. I waited. No reply. Then, late that night, I heard a knock at my door. My heart stopped. Not because I didn't know what it was, because I did. My body recognized the pattern before my brain finished the thought. I went to the peephole and looked out. 2 figures in the hallway. One uniformed. One not. A police officer. And my building manager standing beside him, looking apologetic. My stomach dropped through the floor. She'd done it. She'd called in a wellness check. I opened the door just enough to speak. Hi, I said, voice steady, forcing my hands not to shake. I'm Madison. I'm okay. The officer looked calm, professional. Ma'am, we got a call from a family member saying they haven't heard from you and they're concerned. I nodded slowly. I already called the non-emergency line earlier this week, I said. I warned them this might happen. My mother has been escalating because I set boundaries. The officer's expression shifted slightly, recognition. He glanced at his notes. Yes, he said. I see a note here. Thank you. My building manager murmured, I'm sorry. They insisted. I swallowed hard and kept my voice calm. I'm fine, I repeated. I'm not a danger to myself. I'm being harassed. The officer asked a few standard questions. I answered clearly. Then he said quietly, if this continues, you can file a report. My throat tightened. I know, I said. I'm going to. After he left, I closed my door and slid down against it, shaking now. Not because I felt guilty, because the escalation had crossed into my home. My mother had used law enforcement to force contact. She had dragged authority to my doorstep to punish silence, and in that moment I understood. The silent phone wasn't confusing to them. It was unbearable. 'Cause silence is the only boundary you can't argue with. The only boundary you can't gaslight. The only boundary that makes people like my mother feel powerless. So she tried to recreate power by any means necessary. I stood up, wiped my face, and made the decision I'd been resisting. Not because I wanted drama. 'Cause I needed safety. I opened my laptop and began filling out the online police report for harassment. I attached the screenshots, the HR evidence, the letter, the wellness check info, everything. I didn't submit it yet. I paused at the final button, finger hovering, because I knew the moment I pressed submit, the story would shift forever. My family would call me evil. My mother would tell everyone I was heartless. My brother would say I destroyed the family, but then I remembered the porch post. The mother's heart waiting. The way she'd used that softness to disguise intrusion. And I realized she didn't get to hunt me and still wear the mask of loving mother. Not anymore. I clicked submit. Then I sat back in my chair, breathing hard, and felt the strangest thing, not regret. Relief. Because for the first time, I stopped trying to survive my mother's emotions and started protecting my actual life. Submitting that report didn't create instant peace. It created a new kind of tension, the kind you feel after you finally lock a door you used to leave open just in case. My nervous system kept waiting for the crash. Because in my family, consequences were not allowed. You could forgive. You could forget. You could swallow it. But you could not document it. And you definitely couldn't involve anyone outside the family system. That was the one unforgivable sin, making it real. I woke up the next morning to 12 missed calls from blocked numbers. 3 voicemails. All my mother. Her voice wasn't crying anymore. It was sharp. Controlled. Furious. So, this is what you're doing now, she hissed in one message. You're trying to ruin our lives. In another, she said, you're sick. You need help. And I'm going to get it for you whether you like it or not. Then, the final voicemail, quieter and colder than the rest. You don't get to do this to me. You don't get to disappear. I will not be silenced. I stared at the screen and felt my stomach go still. That last line wasn't about love. It was about power. She was telling me explicitly, my silence was not allowed. I saved the voicemails. I forwarded them to my email. More receipts. Then I did something I'd always been afraid to do. I told the truth to someone who knew my family. Not a stranger. Not a therapist. Someone in the orbit. I called my cousin Jenna, the one who always messaged, just call her, life's short. Jenna answered on the second ring, cheerful. Hey, are you okay? She asked. I didn't soften it. My mom impersonated me to HR, I said. She changed my emergency contact and my address to their house. She threatened a wellness check. Then she actually sent police to my apartment. There was a long pause. Wait, Jenna whispered. What? I repeated it slower. Facts only. No emotion. No interpretation. Jenna went quiet again, then finally said, "Madison, that's not normal." I felt my throat tighten. "I know," I said softly. "I just need you to understand why I'm not calling." Jenna exhaled shakily. I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't know it was like that." That one sentence felt like oxygen. Not because I needed validation from Jenna, but because it proved something. When people actually hear facts, the "but she's your mom's" script gets harder to sell, and my mother knew that too. That's why she always kept everything vague. That's why she loved porch posts and sad captions. Facts are her enemy. By noon, the retaliation moved from my phone to my reputation. Laura texted me with a screenshot. Mom had posted again. "When your child turns strangers against you and calls the police on you, you realize how cold the world has become." Comments were brutal. "How could she do that to you? Children are evil. You should sue her." My mother was building a public case. Not for me. For everyone else. She wanted witnesses. She wanted people to pressure me. She wanted my silence to feel expensive. I didn't comment. I didn't argue. I did the opposite. I went offline. I blocked her on every platform. Not to punish. To remove her access to my nervous system. Then I got a knock on my door. Not police this time. My building manager. I opened it cautiously. He looked uncomfortable. "A woman called," he said quietly. "Said she was your mother. She's asking if she can come up to see you." I told her no, like you asked. My chest tightened. "Did she say she was coming?" I asked. He shook his head. "She said she'd drive down if she had to. I wanted you to know." I swallowed hard. "Thank you," I said. When he left, I locked the deadbolt and stood with my hands still on it, breathing. She was moving closer. She didn't just want the phone to stop being silent. She wanted to physically force the connection back into existence. I called my therapist again. "She's escalating," I said. I filed the report. "Now she's trying to come to my building." My therapist's voice stayed calm. "Good," she said. "You're documenting. Now we keep tightening access." Tightening access. That phrase sounded harsh until I realized it was the exact opposite. It was what healthy people do. They close doors when someone keeps trying to break in. That afternoon, I went to the courthouse website and read about protective orders. I didn't file one immediately. I just read. I learned the language. Harassment. Talking. Misuse of emergency services. Impersonation. I learned what counted. 'Cause part of healing from a family like mine is learning that your experience has words in the real world, not just in therapy. Then Dad finally called. Not from his number. From Laura's phone. I stared at it for a second, then answered. "Madison," he said, voice raw. "What have you done?" I felt my jaw tighten. "Dad," I said calmly, "what has she done?" He inhaled like he wanted to argue, then his voice cracked. "She's not sleeping," he said. "She's crying. She says you're making her look like a monster." There it was. Not "she hurt you." Not "she crossed a line." Problem was optics. Problem was her image. I kept my voice steady. "I didn't make her look like anything," I said. "I documented what she did." He exhaled sharply. "She was trying to protect you," he insisted again, weaker this time. "Dad," I said, "she didn't call HR to protect me. She called HR to find me." Silence. Then he whispered, "She says you're mentally unwell." My throat tightened. "I'm mentally well enough to set boundaries," I said. "And she's using that accusation to justify invading my life." He sounded exhausted. "I don't know how to stop her," he admitted. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of that sentence. Because he was finally saying what he'd never admitted, that my mother wasn't a woman he managed. She was a force he enabled. I opened my eyes. "Then you don't stop her," I said softly. You step out of her way and stop delivering her access to me. He swallowed. She'll blame me, he whispered. Let her, I said. That's what she does. She blames whoever won't submit. The line went quiet. Then, in a small voice, my father said something that made my chest ache. She's going to drive to you, he admitted. Tomorrow. She thinks if she sees you face to face, you'll cave. My stomach dropped. There it was. The next move. Physical confrontation. Surprise visit. Kind that turns boundaries into a scene. The kind that forces you to either surrender or look cruel in public. I felt my pulse quicken, then steady. 'Cause fear was expected. Planning was power. I said calmly. Dad, if she comes to my building, I will not see her. I will call the police. And I will file for a protective order. He inhaled sharply. Madison, I cut him off gently. No, I said. This is the line. He went quiet. Then, almost like he was losing something inside himself, he whispered, Okay. When I hung up, I sat down at my table and opened my laptop again. I printed a copy of the police report confirmation. I printed the HR email. I printed the letter. I put them in a folder by the door like someone preparing for a storm. Because only this time I wasn't preparing to appease. I was preparing to enforce, and in that moment I understood the twist in the whole story. My parents called me ungrateful for leaving. They wanted me to feel guilty enough to come back. But when the phone stayed silent, their anger turned into panic, because silence meant they had lost access. And when someone like my mother loses access, she doesn't miss you. She hunts you. The next day was going to be the test. Would I fold when she showed up, or would I finally prove to her and to myself that silence wasn't a phase? It was a boundary with teeth. I barely slept that night. Not because I was second-guessing my boundary, but because my body was bracing for impact. There's a special kind of fear that comes from knowing someone is willing to ignore every no you've ever said. Doesn't feel like sadness. Feels like surveillance. Like your front door isn't a door anymore. It's a weak spot. 9:14 a.m. My building manager texted me. She's here. 2 words and my stomach dropped. I didn't run to the window. I didn't panic dial anyone. I did what I'd planned. I locked the deadbolt, checked the chain, and opened the folder I'd prepared. Receipts printed, ready. Then I sat at my kitchen table and waited like a person who had decided not to be dragged into a scene. The buzz came next. The intercom. I didn't answer. Buzzed again. I still didn't answer. Then my phone lit up with a blocked call. I let it ring out. Another. Ring out. Another. Ring out. Then a text from Dad, from his number this time. Dad, she just wants to see you. Please don't make this worse. I stared at don't make this worse and almost laughed. As if her showing up uninvited wasn't worse. As if my refusal to open the door was the problem, not her refusal to respect it. I didn't reply. I stood, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. My mother was in the hallway, hair done, coat buttoned, face set like she was attending a funeral she expected to host. Laura stood a few feet behind her, tense. My mother leaned close to my door and said, loud enough for the hallway to hear, Madison, stop being ridiculous. Open up. I didn't answer. Silence. She knocked. 3 sharp raps. Madison, she called, voice switching into that fake soft tone she used when an audience was present. Honey, I'm worried. I drove all this way because I love you. Then, louder for the neighbors. I'm your mother. I have a right to see you. That line made my throat tighten. She was performing. Building a witness list in real time. Because if I opened the door, she'd win access. If I didn't, she'd win sympathy. I stayed silent. The next knock was harder. If you don't open this door, she snapped, I'm calling the police. I'm not leaving until they make sure you're okay. I took a slow breath. Then I did exactly what I'd promised myself I would do. I didn't yell through the door. I didn't beg her to leave. I didn't argue. I picked up my phone and called the police, non-emergency first, because I was still trying to keep it calm. "Hi," I said, voice steady. "I'm at my address. A family member is outside my apartment refusing to leave. I have an existing report number. I need assistance." The dispatcher asked if I felt threatened. My hand was steady on the phone. "Yes," I said. "She has already misused a wellness check to force contact." The dispatcher said officers would be sent. I hung up and placed my phone on the table like it was just another item in my plan, and my mother kept knocking. "Madison," she yelled, now dropping the soft voice. "You are acting insane. Do you hear me? Insane." There it was again. The word she loved. The label she used to justify anything. Laura's voice cut in softer. "Madison, please. Just talk to her for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. The oldest trap in the family. Just a little talk. Just a quick apology. Just enough access to pull you back into the system." I didn't answer. 'Cause 5 minutes with my mother was never 5 minutes. It was a hook with a rope attached. The door handle jiggled. Not turning fully, she didn't have a key, but the fact she tried made my skin crawl. She wanted me to feel unsafe in my own home, so I would surrender out of fear. She leaned close and hissed, "You can't do this to me." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I crossed a line." Just, "You can't do this to me." A few minutes later, I heard footsteps and voices in the hallway. 2 officers. The building manager was with them, looking relieved. My mother immediately shifted into performance mode. I could hear her voice change, higher, trembly. "Officer, thank God," she said. "I'm so worried. My daughter has been acting not like herself. She won't answer her phone. She's isolating. I think she needs help." The officer asked for my name. My mother gave it. Then she added, "I'm her mother. I just want to see her." I opened the door then. Not wide. Just enough that the officers could see me. Calm. Dressed. Clear-eyed. Not the hysterical, unstable daughter she was describing. "Hi," I said. "I'm Madison. I called." The officer's posture shifted. He looked at me, then at my mother, then back at me. "Are you okay, ma'am?" He asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm fine. I'm being harassed." My mother gasped like I'd stabbed her. "Harassed?" she cried. "I drove here because I love her." One officer asked, "Ma'am, do you want your mother here?" I didn't look at my mother. I looked at the officer. "No," I said clearly. "I want her to leave. I have documentation of impersonation to my workplace, a prior wellness check, and a letter threatening escalation." I handed the officer my folder. Receipts. Paper. Reality. My mother's face changed as she realized I wasn't going to fight emotionally. I was going to win administratively. The officer flipped through the pages, expression tightening slightly. "Ma'am," he said to my mother, "you need to leave the premises." My mother's mouth fell open. "What?" she snapped. "I'm her mother." The officer's tone stayed neutral. "She's an adult. She has asked you to leave." My mother's eyes shot to Laura like, "See what she's doing to me." Laura looked pale, frozen. My mother turned back to the officer. "This is unbelievable," she hissed. "She's mentally ill. She's trying to ruin us." She called the police on her own mother. The officer didn't react. "Ma'am," he repeated, "you need to leave. If you refuse, you could be cited for trespassing." My mother stared at me then, pure rage behind her eyes. No tears. No softness. Just anger that her authority wasn't working. "You will regret this," she whispered to me, low enough that only I could hear. I met her gaze calmly. "I already regret letting you have access for so long," I said quietly. Then I stepped back and closed my door, chain locked, deadbolt clicked. Through the peephole, I watched as the officers escorted her toward the elevator. She kept talking, hands moving, trying to sell her story. But the officers didn't care. They cared about consent, about boundaries, about who had the right to be in my space, and for the first time in my life, an authority figure took my side without making me prove I deserved it. After the hallway went quiet, my body started shaking. Not because I felt guilty, 'cause my nervous system was finally releasing years of fear. I slid down against the door and cried once, silently, into my sleeve. Not dramatic, not loud. Just the grief of realizing your mother would rather call you insane than respect your no. My phone buzzed. Text from Dad. Dad, why did you do that? You humiliated your mother. I stared at the message and felt that old urge to explain, then watched it die. I typed one sentence. She humiliated herself by refusing to leave when I said no. Then I muted him too. Because the test wasn't just whether I could shut my mother out. The test was whether I could stop participating in the family story where my boundaries were cruel and their invasions were love. That day, I didn't just keep the phone silent. I made it clear that silence wasn't emptiness anymore. It was a locked door. It was consequences. It was safety, and after the police left, I knew there was only one final step left to close this chapter completely. Something calm, legal, and permanent enough that my mother couldn't turn it into another porch post. I didn't celebrate after they escorted her out. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear. Like the fog had finally burned off and I could see the shape of my family without the soft filter I'd been trained to use. My mother didn't come because she missed me. She came because I made her powerless. And when she didn't get access, she tried to use the police, my job, my relatives, even my building manager as tools. Love doesn't recruit an army. Love doesn't impersonate you. Love doesn't show up uninvited and demand a right to your body and your space. That night, I didn't answer Dad. I didn't answer Laura. I didn't scroll my mother's social media to see what story she was telling now. I did the most adult thing I'd ever done. I handled it like a real situation, not like a family drama I was supposed to keep private. The next morning, I went to the courthouse and filed for a protective order. I didn't do it with trembling rage. I did it with the same calm I used to pay bills. I brought the folder, the HR impersonation, the letter, the wellness check documentation, the voicemails, the police visit from yesterday, the building manager's note. I laid it out in order, dates and facts, no emotion, because facts were the one thing my mother couldn't twist without looking insane. The clerk glanced through it and looked up at me. "This is a lot," she said gently. I nodded. "It became a lot when I stopped cooperating," I replied. She stamped forms, gave me next steps, a hearing date, conditions. Felt surreal, turning my mother into paperwork. But then I remembered something my therapist said. "You're not making her a villain. You're responding to her behavior." When I left the courthouse, my phone buzzed. A message from Laura. "Laura, Mom says you're dead to her. Dad says you've destroyed the family." My hands didn't shake this time. I stared at the words and felt relief again. Because dead to her was just another way to say, "You're not under my control." It wasn't grief. It was rage in costume. I wrote back to Laura once, and only once. I didn't destroy the family. I protected myself. If you want to see me, you can. But I won't talk about Mom. That's final. Laura didn't respond immediately. When she did, it was small. "Laura, I understand. I'm sorry." I read it twice. Not because it fixed everything. Because it was the first time someone in my family acknowledged reality without calling me dramatic. That afternoon, Dad finally texted. "Dad, you embarrassed us. You could have just called. Why are you doing this? Why is the phone silent?" I stared at the message for a long time, then opened a blank reply. I knew he wanted an argument. He wanted me to justify myself so he could poke holes in it and hand the pieces to my mother. He wanted me back in the old role, The daughter who explains, apologizes, performs. I didn't give him that. I gave him the truth, clean and short. Me, the phone is silent because you called me ungrateful and told me not to expect you to chase me. I believed you. Then I hit send and muted him again. No follow-up. No debate. 'Cause he didn't need a dissertation. He needed to feel the consequence of his own words weeks past. My mother tried a few more things. A new number. A message through a cousin. A long email titled A Mother's Love. I didn't open it. I forwarded it to my lawyer's email folder and moved on. Every attempt got the same response. No access. No stage. No audience, and something incredible happened in the space she left behind. My life got quieter. I started eating breakfast without my chest tight. I started enjoying Sundays again. I went hiking. I made friends in my city. I stopped bracing when my phone buzzed. I stopped checking my screen like it was a judge. I didn't become heartless. I became free. One evening, months later, I was sitting at my kitchen table with tea when I realized I hadn't thought about my mother all day. Not once. That was the real sign of healing. Not anger, not closure, not a perfect apology. Just absence. Peace that didn't require me to earn it with pain. My mother wanted the silent phone to be temporary. Tantrum. A phase. A bluff. She thought if she pushed hard enough, I'd come back to the old system. She was wrong. The silence wasn't punishment. It was my boundary in its purest form. A locked door. Clothesline. A life that no longer revolved around her moods, and that's the part nobody tells you. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't exposing them or proving you're right. Sometimes it's simply letting the phone stay silent long enough that your nervous system finally learns the truth. You were never responsible for holding the family together. You were just the one they blamed when it started falling apart.